Hello and welcome to News Trash, the weekly edition of news here on the Geek Show, where we look at the past 7 days of what's been happening in the world of video games and have a good old talk about it. And it's been very productive for us these past couple of weeks. I am Rob, and as ever, I'm joined by the Prob. Hello, Rob.
Joined by the Prob.
The Prob. The problem.
No, I am happy to be the Prob. You know, having the in front of your name, it just kind of, it's a statement, isn't it?
Yeah, there's a wrestler who's called Brian Kendrick, but he calls himself the Brian Kendrick, so it gives it a bit more drama, you know. It
gives your name that little bit more oomph. Can you imagine walking into a job interview and introducing yourself like that?
Yeah. Swagger it takes. Absolute swagger.
I am the Rob.
Yeah. Anyhow, we don't hate PlayStation, because this is going to come up again this week. The news has been very much anti-PlayStation, so we'll get out of the way. We're ambivalent. We are ambivalent. No. That's all I'm saying at the front.
Okay. We will talk more about that in a bit. Okay.
Yes, but I'm just putting that as a teaser at the front. We are ambivalent.
Right, so moving on though, follow up to a story that we did not long ago, which was about loot boxes, right?
Yeah.
The interesting thing about the loot boxes, the report from the University of Plymouth and the University of Wolverhampton, that was requested by the Gamble Away charity, saying that loot boxes are structurally and psychologically akin to gambling. Now, things have started happening on that front. Brazil, for example, has launched an inquiry to ban loot boxes completely.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's good.
Now, the Brazilian authorities have launched an inquiry aiming to ban loot boxes in their country on the recommendation of the National Association of Children and Adolescent Defense Centers, which, is basically a glorified name for like a child protection agency.
Yeah. It's not just children who need protecting, it's people with gambling addiction problems, but still, somebody's doing it. That's the important part.
Now, the thing is, there's an interesting offshoot from that. I think that's going to be something that, this report is going to get cited all over the place. We know that.
The thing is, momentum is moving in a way that's anti-loot boxes now, so I think it's only a matter of time before the vice really tightens on that economic model for gaming.
Interesting you say that, because that leads me on to... It's an interesting opinion piece that Rob Fahey, one of the contributing editors for GameIndustry.biz, he's done a piece on Apple and Google, suggesting that because they've already suggested that they've already indicated a desire to move their platforms away from the free-for-all monetization model, maybe make it more structured, have more rules and regulations. And he's suggesting that they could pull the plug on the whole mobile games monetization, because it is a free-for-all at the moment. It's basically, this is where the loot box model came from. It came from mobile game platform monetization.
Mobile game monetization is borderline evil. The one where it says you can play this game for an hour and then you run out of stamina, but if you want to play for longer, you gotta pay.
Yes,
that's the thing. It's a really nasty strategy for gameplay.
And that's the thing. Those things need to be much more regulated because they involve money. And now that this is happening with loot boxes, it's only a matter of time before people turn their eyes towards the mobile games market and say, hey, hang about.
Yeah, it's all interlinked. The interesting thing here is, did you for a long time get the feeling that the video game industry was kind of going along unregulated, like it was master of the world and nothing could touch it?
Oh, God, yes.
Did you get that impression from it? It wasn't just me, was it?
No, the reason why you felt like that was because that was quite literally what was happening, and I've been saying for years there needs to be more regulation in video games. Right. I know people are going to disagree with me, right? They're going to disagree with me, and with what I've got to say here. But here's the thing, right? When you have an industry as heavily unregulated as the video games industry has historically been, then you basically leave the door open for all sorts of things to be done, right?
All sorts of piranhas and vultures to make their millions.
Let me give you an example of the things that can happen when in an unregulated video games industry, right? 6 days to Fallujah.
You don't need to say anything else.
There's an actual story here, right?
Yeah, it's a game that shouldn't exist, but yeah, go on.
Yeah, one of the biggest Muslim advocacy groups in America, in the USA, have called on Sony, Microsoft, and Valve to not distribute 6 Days of Fallujah. They've described the game as an Arab murder simulator that will only normalize violence against Muslims in America and around the world.
Just to clarify this, it's basically said in the promotional piece that American soldiers don't make mistakes and they're always right as soon as they enter a building. So, human cost be damned. And it's also, that's what one of the developers said. And it's also randomly generating these towns and randomly generating these civilians. So it's completely dehumanizing these people.
Yeah.
Who live in Iraq and live in Syria and live in places like this. So yeah, the fact that this game was allowed to happen,
Here's the thing. The gaming, according to according to the Council on American Islamic Relations, right? The gaming industry must stop dehumanizing Muslims. And this is a general call for the industry itself to stop doing this, which I actually agree with. Having faceless mooks is one thing, but when you have games that constantly describe Arabs as terrorists, which a lot of games have, historically. The gaming industry must stop dehumanizing Muslims. Video games like 6 Days in Fallujah only serve to glorify violence that took the lives of hundreds of Iraqi civilians, justify the Iraq War, which was illegal, and reinforce anti-Muslim sentiment at a time when anti-Muslim bigotry continues to threaten human life, which are all very valid points. Yeah. Anyway, moving on. We're going to continue on. Still got a lot of news to plow through. But yeah, like I said, things like that can happen in an unregulated video games industry.
Yeah.
Other things that can happen in an unregulated video games industry are the ESA confirming that E3 2021 is going to be free and online only.
You say that, but they did try and put things behind the paywall.
I was about to say, that was right after they got a massive backlash because of the suggestion that they might put things behind the paywall.
Yeah, honestly, I don't think... This just last year basically made the case that events like E3 don't need to happen. That digital is cheaper, digital is more accessible, and they can control the conversation. Like the developers of games, the publishers of games can control the conversation and how something is talked about. At the same time, there was too bloody much of it.
Yeah.
I couldn't keep up with Jeff Keighley's Summer Game Fest. There was just way too much of it. So... I'm happy that E3 is back in a way that it can sort of compact all of these things into one weekend or whatever it is, but at the same time, with it being digital, there's no reason for anybody to be involved. There's no reason for any of these companies that have put their name on the sheet that they're going to be there to give their big announcements. They save their big announcements so when they want to control the conversation. I can see this effectively just being in the middle of the road, so indie showcase or smaller game showcase. It's not going to... This is my opinion. Whether I'm right or not remains to be seen.
I was about to poke holes in what you just said. Literally about to poke holes in what you just said.
Yeah, but the thing is, that's the thing, isn't it? All these games companies had a year of controlling the conversation, of making everything about them rather than sharing the spotlight. And in a industry of super competitiveness right now, where the mind share is pretty much equal between Xbox and Microsoft, they need to have these opportunities to have most of the mind share. So I don't think this is going to be an old-fashioned E3 event with all of the big surprises and all the big announcements. I don't think it's not going to
look, it can't. That can't happen. We know that. But when you're talking about, it's going to be reduced to like an indie showcase, I don't think that's going to happen either.
With like Microsoft, I mean, it's going to be a smaller scale game showcase.
Let me explain. E3 is going to be between the 12th and 15th of June. Basically, several major companies have already thrown their support and are backing E3 as a digital-only thing. And I think part of that is because it's the ESA that are in charge of E3.
Have you heard about some of the things that the ESA did when it was an event? It was, like 75,000 to have a carpet in your booth.
Yeah, we're not going to go into that. We're not going to go into that. But Nintendo, Xbox, Capcom, Konami, Ubisoft, Take-Two, Warner Brothers, and Koch Media have they basically confirmed that they will be part of E3.
Let's just pause on that. Konami confirmed that they're going to be part of it?
Yeah.
That's interesting because Konami have kind of been vacant from games for a very long time. So that has me interested. More than the return of E3, I'll be perfectly honest.
Yeah, the thing that's noticeable, though, from that list is that EA and PlayStation have yet to confirm whether they're going to be part of E3.
PlayStation won't. And again, PlayStation don't want to say anything these days. They're just so very, very silent. But EA have kind of made their own thing, EA Play, but so have Ubisoft Forward, so have Microsoft, their showcases. Everybody has. But the only benefit I can see to this is that companies want everything to be compact in that sort of WrestleMania weekend, the Super Bowl weekend, the FA Cup final weekend, whatever you, like sporting analogy you want. But at the end of the day, it can't be completely controlled in the same way that it was when E3 was the only game in town.
Yeah, exactly.
Like companies can have their E3 conference, but they can also go ahead and do other things all over the place.
Yeah, well, I mean, this is the thing.
Which just on this last point, which completely undermines the value of E3. But I'm okay with that.
See, this is the thing. ESA, I think, have leveraged a lot of stuff to get this E3 off the ground. I think they have leveraged a lot of stuff to get this E3 off the ground, because at one point it might not have happened, especially with Sony and Square and Microsoft doing their own showcases already this year. After
this is a do or die. This is a do or die for E3.
Exactly. I think they've thrown a lot of eggs into this basket this year to make this happen.
Yeah. And I don't think they don't have remotely close to the same level of power that they used to. So
exactly. We did mention Sony, and obviously we are at that point, Rob. So
yeah. So I've got to stress again: we don't hate Sony, we don't hate Microsoft, we don't hate Nintendo. We are ambivalent about them all. We like them all as much as we like all of them as much as we dislike all of them.
We'll play games on all of the platforms, but this report by Jason Schrier on Bloomberg.
Schrier, but yeah, go on.
Schrier, however you pronounce his name. I've seen responses to this report, and I've seen a lot of pro PlayStation responses to this report where they try to downplay the angle and the contextualization that he's put on.
Well, let's just drop some bullet points because there's a lot in this article, isn't there?
Yes, there's a lot in it.
Well, number one is there's a company that was set up in San Diego, and they were rumoured to be making their own game, and it was forever. Like, the question was, what are they going to make, when they're going to announce it? And then this article, Jason Schrier talked to somebody who was a former head and now left, and that person basically said they tried to push the idea of an original game. It was shot down. They tried to push the idea of Uncharted 1 remake of PS5. It was shot down.
I don't think poach is the right word. Broach, maybe.
Is that what I said?
You said poach both times.
Sorry, broach is what I meant. Yeah. And they finally settled on basically a PS5 remake of the original Last of Us, which that fact alone is kind of pointless because it's had a PS4 remake. So is this going to be basically Sony's Grand Theft Auto 5? But essentially what it comes down to with that is, even though this company was hungry to make something, they were shot down every single level by the heads of Sony.
Yeah, they were in particular shut down by Herman Hulst, the former head of Guerrilla Games.
And now Worldwide Head Studio. And also Bend Studios wanted to make a sequel to Days Gone, but that was shot down, so...
Yeah, I mean, the company that Rob's on about is Sony's Visual Arts Service Group. They were headed by Michael Mumbauer, and they basically were, The Last of Us remake for PlayStation 5. You got the Naughty Dog apologists jumping on board with this, saying, obviously you need Naughty Dog involved. You don't understand. They're the ones who made the game. They're the only ones who can understand how this game should be made. What people fail to realize is that the Visual Arts Service Group were also one of the companies that worked on the original Last of Us game, doing a lot of the legwork for The Last of Us.
There was a comment in the article as well how basically it was implied heavily that Sony Studio Japan was shut down because they don't want to put money behind games that are, in quotation marks, only successful in Japan.
Which is a massive kick in the teeth for the Japanese market.
Which, when you see all the news stories of this person's left Studio Japan, that person's left Studio Japan, another person's left Studio Japan, and set up this new studio called Bokeh Studios, it really does highlight another phrase in the article, which I don't 100% stand by because they are quite open with setting up new franchises, but clearly not as open-minded as they can be. But anyway, yeah, that phrase was, Sony is becoming increasingly risk-averse.
Sony thing is, like any big corporation, they are risk-averse.
And increasingly conservative.
Yes, they are increasingly conservative. Right. In normal terms, in normal layman's terms, let me see if I can explain this. Right, okay, right. This isn't a hard and fast rule, but in general, you'll see that this is the case, right? The richer you are, the more conservative you become.
Yeah, that's kind of true.
That's a fundamental truth that affects, individuals, families, businesses, doesn't matter. And Sony are one of the richest companies in the world.
No, they're not.
Right? Not
even close, Rob.
Are they not even close?
Not even close.
Are they not in the top 20?
Nope.
Really?
Nope. I think they're worth 97 billion. Microsoft is worth over $1 trillion.
Yeah,
Apple's worth over $1 trillion. Amazon's worth over $1 trillion. So, end of the day, Sony aren't that big.
So they should be. They should.
They're not that big.
I will look into this, but I thought Sony was...
They're not one of the top 20 companies on the planet. Nowhere near. No way, Jose. No way, Jose.
I thought they would be.
But it's still, the point is, success has great... Because a certain formula works, I can understand why Sony would have this idea that, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But at the same time, the industry is changing, so this increasingly conservative angle that just came up in this article is starting to explain a lot as far as the figureheads of the company, as far as all of these stories happening and they're having no comment passed on it, as far as Games Pass being a huge driver to people deciding to get an Xbox ahead of a PlayStation and them not doing anything about it. So the conservative angle is really running through Sony right now, and they really need to sort of nip this in the bud, because as much as we talk about this as dangerous stuff that Sony's really damaging themselves, no real damage is being caused yet. But they really need to do something before real damage is caused.
See, I disagree. I think real damage has already been caused. Okay,
it's not far
in terms of stock. No, I think it's already been caused in terms of stock prices, in terms of shareholders. Sony, the rumor continues that Sony are developing their own version of Game Pass, which we've known for a while, right? And that's one of the things that a lot of the pro-Sony sector of the fan base are banking on. They're banking on that happening. Now, I would like to see more concrete details on what they have planned, because even on the back of this article by Jason Schrier, however, on the back of this article, because the article it focuses on the fact that Sony want blockbusters. They want the PlayStation 5 to be a blockbuster machine, which I actually do agree with. I do agree with the idea, and I think Sony have made themselves an inhospitable place. PlayStation has become an inhospitable place for indie developers. When you look at, Video Game Chronicle have done 2 articles about the digital-only games that will disappear when the PlayStation closes its stores, and of those, there are 138 games that apparently, according to their research, won't be available anywhere after the stores close.
That number,
the majority of those,
a ton higher if it wasn't for PlayStation now as well.
Yeah, the majority of those games that will disappear completely are indie games. And the thing is, I've actually looked into this whole... Sony have basically said you can download the games, right? And they put on their FAQ, how do I access my owned games? You can download your owned content onto your PS3, PS Vita, and PSP devices by accessing the download list on the respective device. Now, here's the thing, right? This is just teeny tiny bit of lack of foresight here. The download list on the PlayStation 3, where was it, Rob? Do you remember?
On the Star.
Yeah, it was the same on the PSP and on the PS Vita. So in order to get to the download list on that device, you have to go to the PlayStation Store on that device, which is no longer accessible on that device to access the the download list.
I'm trying to remain like platform agnostic here, and he's really pushing it to one side. So that's lots of bad PlayStation news we've had. It's the latest in a series of bad days for PlayStation. So
it's a lot of bad press for the PlayStation at the moment. Maybe there'll be some good press. Maybe Omid Jalili will come out and belly dance.
He really likes that joke, but yeah, they'll have some big announcement that'll excite fans.
Yeah, it all seems to be really, really negative news this week because Counter-Strike Go, CSGO, is under investigation by the Esports Integrity Commission and the FBI.
Oh, snap.
Basically, they're investigating match fixing in CSGO. And this is kind of on the back of Tencent and the Chinese authorities busting that massive cheating ring in China. You know, that was where they reckon it was like $76 million they'd made. And this is another cheating ring that's being investigated. They haven't put any actual figures on how much they're making, but the Esports Integrity Commission recently issued 35 bans to Australian CSGO players for betting on their own matches, and apparently there's an organised match-fixing group in America that involves a relatively small but significant group of players.
I mean, this just is an illustration of how much video games culture has grown over the years, that the FBI will be involved in cracking down on illicit tactics and illicit money-making from certain titles.
But again, we come back to this whole idea of an unregulated video games industry.
Yeah, it's got away scot-free with way too much for way too long, and it feels like now that reality is really sinking into the video game industry.
Yeah. Speaking of unregulated, Twitch.
Which has a lot of fans and it has a lot of naysayers.
Yeah, it has a lot of fans and a lot of naysayers. They set a new monthly viewership record in March with 2.06 billion hours watched, according to Scream Elements analytics partner Rainmaker.gg. And that's a lot of people watching people play things.
That's not what Twitch surely is. Twitch has all sorts of things going on it. It's a real wide community. But I want to use this story just to stop a second and ask this question. Why do people watch other people play video games?
Yeah, why not play the game yourself?
Let's not answer it. I just want the people who watch this to answer that question. Comment below. Why do people watch people play video games? I want no colour on that opinion. I just want somebody who does it to tell me below in the comments, please.
Okay.
So, down below.
Anyway, Grand Theft Auto 5 was the most watched game for March, with 181 million hours, followed by League of Legends and Fortnite, Call of Duty Warzone, and Minecraft.
So that's the GTA is really up there, because that's an 8-year-old game now. Yeah.
And it's the first time that Grand Theft Auto 5 has topped the list with of the most watched games on Twitch. But they also, Stream Elements have also identified a growing interest in a particular type of stream.
Go on.
Apparently, Twitch users have spent over 2 million hours watching streamers sleep, and a single streamer has accounted for most of those.
Yeah, this is, we used to have the Geek show, that's the name of who we are. That used to be a show as well.
Yeah.
And that was the show in which, at the end anyway, where we talked about all sorts of weird things happening in the news. What raccoons are up to this week, and what Elon Musk is. It's amazing how many of those things crossed over. And this feels like a story from that, because in that there was a story about how somebody, a Korean guy, just watched...
Korean kid studying,
thousands like viewers, and he was just doing it for like hours on end.
Yeah, he'd spend like an hour a day, he'd record himself for an hour a day studying, and he'd sit there with the camera like just behind him, and all you'd see is him studying for an hour, and he had something like 500,000 views. Like, how are you doing this? What kind of magic are you using?
Yeah.
There's literally nothing going on.
So, yeah, it's the same with this. I don't understand it, but it's not the sort of thing you try to understand. It's just sort of the weird ASMR community on the internet is just bonkers.
Yeah.
But yeah, honestly, that thing I said before, comment below why people watch people playing video games. I want to understand this. Genuinely.
Yeah. Developer Slowbros have made they are in the process of making a handmade space adventure called Halibut. And they've released a story trailer for the game, which is simply called Halibut.
Let's just context here. It was first trailed in 2017 with a teaser trailer, which basically had Harold, the title of the character, cleaning down a wall. It had very much a mystery tone to it. It was narrated, but the big elephant in the room was it wasn't animated in a way which any game really has been before. The visual look of the game was as if it's been hand animated with clay, like a movie, like a Wallace and Gromit movie, but it's a video game.
The animation, the art style, I think it's one of the most striking games I've seen for a long, long time.
It reminds me of Cuphead in the regard of when you see a video game which genuinely looks like one of a kind, you realise how much all games look the same.
Yeah, exactly.
And Cuphead and Halibut, so striking, so stunning.
Exactly. They stand out so much. And the thing is, I think they've actually hand animated pretty much all of it.
Yeah, to an extent. Because I don't know how that works when you hand animate and animate by code and software manipulation. It's really confusing.
I think what they've done the hand animation first, and then done the code to fit the hand animation rather than the other way around.
Yeah.
So basically they've animated for as many different scenarios as they can come up with, and then they'll basically round it out by fitting in other scenarios that they couldn't think of in the first place. Yeah. So they've got the code to fit all of it. And I think that's the way they've been doing it. But
the second trailer is a gameplay trailer. It doesn't really show much gameplay. It's just sort of pondering.
Well, it's more of a
wandering around the world. It's sort of an expanded gameplay story trailer.
Harold is a young lab assistant who is forced to live his life on board a city-sized spaceship submerged beneath an alien ocean, 250 years after it fled Earth to preserve the human race. And most of the ship's inhabitants have reconciled their lives to a life lived aboard the sunken ship. The lead scientist still works tirelessly to find a way for the ship to leave the planet and find a new, drier home. To me, this feels, the story trailer feels a little bit what's in it? A little bit Psychonauts, a little bit Monkey Island, a little bit of the quirkiness and the humour of that, mixed together with some of the point-and-click adventureness that you get in games like Broken Sword and stuff like that.
Yeah. End of the day, I'm really looking forward to it, but there's not a lot known about it because it's still, on both trailers, it says coming soon, and it'll have a website, so I don't know what platform it's coming to, I don't know when it's coming out, but it's a game to keep an eye on. And
definitely.
Going forward, this is what we're going to be doing. It doesn't necessarily need to be like a big AAA trailer or some new cool trailer. It's just something that we find interesting that we're going to highlight at the back end of every episode of News Trash going forward. As just sort of a nice little note to end on, especially this week when all the news is bad. We need to sort of have a little uplift at the back end of the show and make things a little bit more positive. But yes, that is it for this week's edition of News Trash. If you're listening on the podcast provider, thank you very much. Please do subscribe, please do share us, please do give us a rating because it helps us stand out in an incredibly crowded marketplace. But yeah, also there's a Patreon, check that out. But for now, we'll be back, I think, next week. This has been a very hectic past week with lots of content and video game stuff. Yeah. It's just News Trash next week. So until next time, thank you very much for listening and watching.
Bye.